Today we're going to be looking at making a basic car design. From my Tinkercad Create New Design window, the first thing I'm going to do is rename it, just because Tinkercad always picks names that are not very easy to remember. So I'm just going to go with basic car design. You'll be able to modify this as much as you would like or as little as you would like. Feel free to pause this video as you're following along if there's spots where you need to take a little bit more time. The first thing I'm going to do is get the body of my car. I'm going to choose a box for my body. And I notice right now, if I go on top of the little white squares, that this is a 20 millimeter by 20 millimeter box. That's a little small for my car, so I'm just going to make it a little bit bigger. I'm going to go for 50 by 70. And I'm going to make it just a little bit taller as well. Instead of 2 centimeters or 20 millimeters tall, I'm going to go for 30. If you have any particular design constraints that you need to do for yours, feel free to choose different numbers. The very next thing I'm going to do, and one of the harder parts of the vehicle, is to put the axles on. And my axles, I'm going to use those so that I can put the wheels on so that the wheels will actually be able to turn. I'm going to choose a cylinder for my axle, but if you'll notice, if I just bring it right out, it's in the wrong orientation. I could move it around, but there's an easier way. I'm just going to get rid of that one, and I'm going to change my work plane. This is like changing my floor. It's changing where I'm working off of. Now, when I bring the cylinder over, you can see that it's going in the direction that I would like. Again, I'm going to check on the size of my cylinder, and the basic is 20 millimeters by 20 millimeters. That's a little large for my axle. The axle needs to be small enough that the wheel can go on top of it and still turn easily. I'm going to go for 10 by 10. It's important that they are the same, otherwise I'm not so much of a circle anymore, and it just makes it a little harder for everything to roll around. As you can see right now, my axle is fairly high up on the car. That's not the spot that I want it to be on, so I'm just going to move it down. It doesn't have to be all the way down or underneath. It can be if you want, but in terms of making it easier to print out, I just want it to be partly up here. And I'm going to make sure that my wheel is big enough that the wheel itself will contact the ground. Now I've got my axle and it's touching right on the very edge of my car. I'm going to push it back just 2 or 3 millimeters using the arrow at the top to make sure that it's really well seated. If I want this to be longer, if I want it to be longer than 20 millimeters, and now only 17 is coming out, I can make this a longer axle. If I am happy with my work, if this is the size of the axle that I would like it to be, instead of having to do the same thing over and over again, I'm just going to go to the duplicate button at the top, push it, and now I can move that over. And it's already at the same depth that I would like it. This is half my work done for the axle already. I'm going to now move my work plane over. You could keep your work plane the same and just take this all the way through, but in terms of knowing exactly how far you're in, it's just a little easier if you work on this side. I'm going to, again, hit my duplicate button. And then I can bring this over to the other side. So now you can see that my negative is associated with this side of the work plane. So again, I just want to go back down to about -3. So I dragged it all the way through. So it's at exactly the same distance as the same part of the car as the other. But I'm on the other side. Since I'm already on the other side, I'll just duplicate this one, move it down as well. I'd like my wheels to actually be a little bit further apart than this, so I'm going to just move that over. And when I'm finished with that, I'll just put my work plane back down on the bottom. Because I moved this one over, I'll just move this one over again as well. It's okay if they're not exactly right beside each other. I like them to be pretty even, but it'll work either way. So now that I've got my 4 axles for my 4 wheels, I'm going to group everything together so that they stay together. That way, if I have all 5 of my shapes here grouped together into one shape, now when I start manipulating it, if I move it around, I move everything around at the same time, which avoids just the possibility of me moving maybe one of the axles by accident and having it floating in midair compared to the rest of them now. So the only last part that I really need is wheels. So for a wheel, you could go and use a torus or a tube. I want to know exactly what the distance of my of the hole in my wheel is going to be. I'm just going to use a cylinder again. So I'm going to bring that out. I don't need my wheel to be 20 millimeters tall or big. So I'm just going to bring that down. I'm going to go for about 8. And now I want to make sure that my wheel is the size that I'd like it to be. I'm going to go for, I'm going to say 25 by 25 in this case. I definitely want it to be big enough to reach the ground from where my axle is. And I want them to be the same dimension, in the same measurement in both dimensions, so that it is a circle. Now you can tell right now that my wheel is not going to go on very well at this moment because it doesn't have a hole. So I'm going to, you can either take a cylinder or take a cylinder that's already a hole. I'm going to take a cylinder that's already a hole. If you'll recall, I made this 10 millimeters by 10 millimeters. If I make my hole 10 millimeters by 10 millimeters, it's going to be a very exact fit. And because it's such an exact fit, it's going to be hard for it to move around. So I'm going to make mine a little bit bigger. So instead of 10 by 10, I'm going to go with 15 by 15. And just bring this over to where you want in the middle. I like to look at it from the top so that you'll be able to tell how well it is centered. Zoom in on these two so we can get a better view. That's pretty close to center. When I want to see everything again, just unselect it, and this will bring your entire design into view. Just to make it easy for myself, when I'm trying to make a hole go all the way through, I just stick it all the way through so I don't need to worry about it. Select these 2 shapes. Nope, not the 3 that I accidentally selected. I just want these 2. Group them together, and now I have my wheel. Since I want my wheels to be all identical, I'll just select this one, duplicate it, duplicate it again, and duplicate it again. Now I've got 4 wheels, a base, and I'm ready to print out my car. Obviously, you can add any embellishments or decorations to your car that you want. Hopefully this one would work.